Time in the zone moved differently. Nature here still tried to reclaim what had once been hers, but the earth beneath their feet had become foreign, filled with dread and eerie silence. The dead city of Pripyat, once a symbol of life and progress, now stood as nothing more than a reminder of those it had consumed. Stalkers, those daring enough to search for forgotten artifacts among the crumbling buildings and radioactive wastelands, had long grown accustomed to the strange atmosphere. They knew every corner could be dangerous, and every sound might either be a monstrous echo or the presence of something sinister. But in the past few weeks, something had changed. Alexei and his group, experienced stalkers, were traveling along a route they had traversed countless times. But today, everything felt different. The air was thick, heavy with an unnatural tension. Strange readings on their detectors, coming from the radiation anomalies, had been increasing. A storm which had suddenly swept across the zone only added to the ominous atmosphere. "Something's wrong," Alexei said, looking around. "We're being watched." Suddenly, one of the stalkers, Sergei, stopped and stared into the woods. "I heard something," he whispered, nervously glancing over his shoulder. A strange noise, like cracking branches, came from the shadows of the dark trees. "Stop being a coward," Alexei replied. "There's always something strange here. It's probably a boar." But it wasn't a boar. Moments later, they heard distinct footsteps, approaching from the same direction where the cracking noise had come from. The steps grew louder, and then, out of the forest, seemingly from nowhere, appeared a figure. It was emaciated with long, twisted arms that seemed far too long for a human body. Its pale, milk-white eyes stared unblinkingly into the dark. It was the Rake. One of the stalkers, Pavel, turned and was about to flee, but his legs seemed to be glued to the ground. The creature didn't move quickly, but its presence filled the air, suffocating them. It didn't make a sound, except for its claws scraping the ground, leaving marks in the earth. "What the hell is this?" Sergei whispered. Before anyone could do anything, the Rake moved. The air around them grew cold and tense, as though the very atmosphere had turned hostile. Alexei pulled out his pistol and fired, but the bullets passed right through the creature, leaving no trace behind. The shot seemed to vanish into nothingness. "God damn it!" Pavel screamed, dropping his backpack and trying to run. But the figure kept advancing, its body contorting, and for a moment it seemed to appear in several places at once. The stalkers began to panic. Alexei fired again, but it did no good. He felt his heart race as the air around them thickened, becoming denser with every passing second. It was as if the very land beneath them had turned against them. The Rake slowly approached, its claws scraping the earth, making a noise like a tree about to collapse. Alexei knew this wasn't just some creature. This was something far worse, an unimaginable evil left behind in Chernobyl after the disaster. "We need to get out now," Alexei yelled, trying to keep the group together. But it was too late. The creature spread its long claws and, in a swift motion, tore through Pavel. Pavel's screams echoed through the zone. The others stood frozen, but one thought gnawed at them. They weren't alone. Alexei and Sergei tried to escape, but they didn't know where to run. Their bodies moved mechanically, as if they had become part of this nightmare. The zone was their trap, and the Rake was its master. When they found shelter in a ruined building, the silence enveloped them once more. But it wasn't the kind of silence they were used to. This silence was oppressive, suffocating. Alexei stood up, trying to step outside, hoping for a miracle. Sergei followed, though each step felt heavier, as though the earth itself was trying to pull them back in. The sound of metal doors creaking echoed through the empty hallways. And then, from behind, they heard footsteps. The Rake was closer than ever. Alexei, gripped by terror, turned and ran. He knew he wouldn't survive, but at least he could give Sergei a chance. And then, when they came face to face with the creature, Alexei understood. Death would not be quick. The Rake did not kill swiftly, it reveled in the process. Days later, a search party sent to find them only discovered their abandoned equipment and signs of a desperate struggle. The stalkers had vanished into the zone, leaving behind only traces of their final moments. But one investigator noticed something strange. On the old rusted roof, at the exact spot where the stalkers had disappeared, there was a peculiar human-shaped mark. It was deep, twisted, but it remained. a trace of those who had gone forever into the zone. And perhaps the Rake was still watching.
Dmitri and his wife Olga were returning home after a long trip. The night was dark and a fierce snowstorm made it nearly impossible to see the road. Out of nowhere, their headlights revealed an old inn. It appeared deserted, yet a glowing sign reading "Rooms Available" shone with an inviting, warm light. Thinking it unsafe to stay in the car, the couple decided to go inside. The interior was surprisingly warm, and a man in vintage clothing stood at the reception desk. He welcomed them as if he'd been waiting. "Your room is prepared," he said, handing over a key. The room that felt alive. Their room was snug with wooden furniture and a crackling fireplace, yet something felt strange. When Olga removed a mirror from the wall, she found an eerie drawing behind it, enormous eyes staring at them. Later that night, as they lay in bed, the sound of heavy footsteps echoed in the hallway. Dmitri peeked outside and saw the door across from theirs slowly shutting. By morning, Olga awoke to find Dmitri missing. His belongings were still there, but he was gone. When she questioned the receptionist, he replied with indifference, "Sometimes guests disappear." Panicked, Olga tried to leave, but the doors wouldn't budge, and the windows revealed nothing but an endless void of darkness outside. Desperate, she tried breaking a window, but the wooden frames were unyielding, like steel. Her screams went unanswered. The whisper from the shadows. That night, sitting alone in the dark, her door creaked open. A group of shadowy figures stood in the hallway, their eyes glowing faintly. They whispered in unison, "Olga, there's no escape. Join us." Terrified, she ran deeper into the inn, searching for a way out. She stumbled into the basement, where a circle made of human bones lay on the floor. At its center rested a scorched book. Drawn to the circle, she opened the book and saw Dmitri's name, along with many others. Each name had the word "claimed" written beside it. "You can save him," came a voice behind her. It was the receptionist. "Stand in the circle and speak his name." Hesitant but desperate, she obeyed. Dmitri appeared before her, his face marked with strange patterns. He reached out to her, but suddenly screamed, "No! Go! Escape while you can!" Olga broke away from the circle, dashed up the stairs, and found herself outside. When she turned to look back, the inn was gone, as though it had never existed. But as she drove home that night, Dmitri's voice echoed in the darkness, calling her back.